Welcome back to the Growth Snack. Today we're diving into a book with, well, just an absolutely astonishing origin story.
It really is remarkable.
I mean, can you imagine writing something in just 9 days, right after being liberated from one of the worst places imaginable?
And initially planning to publish it anonymously.
Exactly. And then that book, it just becomes this global phenomenon, sells millions and millions, translated everywhere.
And like the author himself said, it wasn't necessarily a bestseller because of, amazing literary skill.
Right.
But
Yeah.
because the title itself promised something people were just desperate for. Meaning.
You're talking about Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, of course.
That's the one. It's such a powerful work, isn't it? It blends his own harrowing personal story from the Nazi concentration camps with the foundations of his whole psychological theory, logotherapy.
And his drives, his whole reason for writing it so fast, was to show that life holds potential meaning, even in the most horrific conditions imaginable, based on what he saw, what he lived.
Yeah, a powerful mission.
So our mission for this deep dive on the Growth Snack is to really, unpack the core insights from this incredible book.
What can we actually learn from Frankl's experiences, his ideas about finding meaning, not just in those extremes, but maybe in our own lives too?
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's unpack this.
Well, Frankl,
Yeah.
he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He takes you right into that unimaginable reality of the camp.
That's brutal.
It's a fight for sheer existence, not just for yourself, but, for your friends too. He paints these pictures, these terrible, vivid pictures, like the selections for the gas chamber.
Percentage of the hand pointing.
Chilling.
Yeah.
And the ghastly explanation someone gave him pointing to the chimney. That's where your friend is, floating up to heaven, just horrific.
And the initial shock must have been just completely disorienting.
Oh, absolutely. Being stripped of everything from your former life, your identity, clothes, dignity, everything.
Frankl talks about this weird, cold, detached curiosity setting in,
Right.
almost like watching something happen to someone else.
A defense mechanism, maybe? And then the survival strategies kick in, right? Clinging to images of loved ones.
Or finding these tiny moments of solace, a beautiful sunset, noticing a single tree. He even mentions a kind of grim, dark humor sometimes.
Yeah, anything to cope. And the whole system, it was designed for dehumanization.
Giving them rags, forcing them into filth, the constant threat of physical abuse for the smallest thing.
Treating them like animals or just numbers. Frankl was number 119,104. He remembers that number.
And those details he includes, they just stick with you. That uncanny rattling noise he mentions.
Of a corpse's head hitting the steps. Yeah.
Or just the sheer unfairness of being beaten for standing slightly wrong during roll call.
The physical toll sounds immense, too. Exhaustion, disease like typhus, those swollen feet.
He talks about how this led to apathy, almost like a necessary shield. Your world just shrinks down.
To the absolute minimum, just surviving this moment, this day.
That sigh of relief. Well, another day is over.
He calls it a cultural hibernation. The inner life just kind of regressed, except maybe for, desperate clinging to rumors about the war, or these really intense, sincere moments of religious feeling.
But here's where it gets, like you said, really interesting. The core of the book, really.
Right, because Frankl observed that even in that absolute despair, meaning was still possible. It could still be found.
Okay, but how? I mean, when everything is taken away, how do you find meaning then?
It wasn't about the external stuff. It couldn't be. It had to be about the internal response.
It's your attitude.
Exactly. He describes this incredibly profound moment, marching in the freezing cold, just focusing intensely on the image of his wife, feeling her presence so strongly, even though he had no idea if she was even alive. And he had this realization, love is as strong as death.
Wow.
That love transcends the physical, finds its meaning in the spiritual connection. That connection, that love, it sustained him.
So, meaning through connection, even imagined connection. What about purpose? Could you find purpose there?
Absolutely. For Frankl himself, it was reconstructing his lost manuscript.
The one they took at Auschwitz.
Yeah. Even when he was sick with typhus, desperately ill, he was scribbling notes on little scraps of paper, hiding them. That commitment to his work, his ideas, that gave him a reason to keep going.
Like an anchor.
Definitely. And he also talks about mentally detaching sometimes, imagining himself in the future, giving a lecture about the psychology of the concentration camp.
Looking at his own suffering, almost like the scientist.
Exactly. He quotes Spinoza. Emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering as soon as we form a clear and precise picture of it. Objectifying it helped him rise above the immediate pain.
that idea of rising above,
Yeah.
that seems central to his point about inner choice, spiritual freedom.
It's the absolute core. Even there, he saw that prisoners still had a choice in how they responded.
The last inner freedom, he calls it.
The ability to choose your attitude, to decide what you would become mentally and spiritually despite it all. It wasn't freedom from the conditions,
No way.
but freedom to take a stand toward them. This idea of being worthy of one's sufferings.
Which doesn't mean liking the suffering.
Not at all. It means turning tragedy into a genuine inner achievement by how you face it. He saw that humans have both potentials, the saint and the swine, as he put it. And which one came out wasn't just about the situation.
It was about an inner decision.
Yes. And think about that incredibly moving story he tells of the young woman near death talking to the chestnut tree outside.
Finding connection there.
Hearing it say, I am life, eternal life. She found meaning right there at the very end.
So powerful. But he also saw the other side, didn't he?
Yeah.
The deadly impact when hope just vanished.
Yes. Absolutely critical. He directly linked the spike in deaths between Christmas 1944 and New Year's 1945 to lost hope.
They thought they'd be home by Christmas.
They had this naive hope, and when that date passed, the disappointment was crushing. He literally saw their physical resistance just plummet.
And that story of his friend.
Tragic. Died on the exact day his dream-predicted liberation wouldn't come for him. It was like the loss of faith in the future, the loss of hope, literally paralyzed his will to live.
Wow. That link between meaning, hope, and the will to live is just laid bare there.
Which brings us perfectly to the second part of the book where he lays out his theory, logotherapy.
Right, which is all built on this idea of the will to meaning.
Exactly. He saw that as man's primary driving force. Different from Freud's focus on pleasure or Adler's on power.
He's that funny little joke about it, right?
Yeah. Psychoanalysis. Patient lies on a couch telling the doctor unpleasant things. Logotherapy. Patient sits up straight but has to hear unpleasant things.
Like confronting the meaning of your own life.
Precisely. And he mentions polls in the book that seem to back him up. Lots of people feeling they needed something to live for, even die for.
So if this will to meaning is so basic, why do so many people, especially today, seem to struggle with emptiness, what he calls the existential vacuum?
Yeah, he saw this as a really widespread modern problem, this feeling of inner emptiness, meaninglessness.
Where does he think it comes from?
Well, he traces it back to sort of two main things. First, losing the basic animal instincts that used to guide behavior. And second, the decline of traditions that used to give people clear values and purpose.
So without those anchors.
People are kind of adrift, which leads them either to conformism, just doing what everyone else does, or totalitarianism, just doing what you're told. He noted polls even back then showing this feeling was really common, especially among students.
And this vacuum, it often shows up as just boredom. Sunday neurosis, he called it.
That's it. That anxiety or emptiness you feel when the weekday distractions stop and you're left facing yourself.
And he connects it to bigger problems, too.
Oh, yeah. Depression, aggression, addiction. He draws a direct line between the give-up-itis he saw in the camps, people losing hope and dying, and things like drug use today. Seeing it as an attempt maybe to escape that feeling of meaninglessness.
Okay, so if the problem is this existential vacuum, how does logotherapy say we fill it? How do we find meaning?
Well, he comes back to those three main paths, the ones he saw even in the camps.
Right.
1, creating something through work, a deed, a project. 2, experiencing something beauty, nature, art, or crucially, experiencing another person through love and deep connection.
And the third one?
Finding meaning even in unavoidable suffering. By choosing your attitude towards it, transforming it into an inner achievement.
And love. He really emphasizes love, doesn't he?
It does. He says love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of their personality. It lets you see the potential in the other person, and through your belief in them, actually help them realize that potential.
That's beautiful. But it's really important to stress, like you said before, he's not saying suffering is good or necessary.
Absolutely crucial point. That's a huge misunderstanding sometimes. He's saying meaning is possible despite unavoidable suffering.
Pointless suffering is just...
Exactly. Unnecessary suffering is masochistic. He even gently critiques our culture for being almost ashamed of unhappiness, which just adds another layer of suffering, being unhappy about being unhappy.
Yeah.
And remember that incredibly touching story of the elderly doctor mourning his wife.
Oh, yes.
He found meaning in the fact that he was the one suffering her loss, because it meant he had spared her that same pain. His suffering had a purpose for him in that context.
So meaning isn't some abstract thing floating out there you have to find?
No, not at all. It's personal, it's situational. It's about finding the potential meaning in each specific situation you face.
He flips the question, right?
Completely. It's not, what can I expect from life? It's, what does life expect from me? What task is waiting for me? This demands responsibility. Your job is to figure out and fulfill the demands of that moment.
And our conscience helps with that.
He suggests our conscience is like an intuitive guide, helping us sense those unique meaning possibilities in each situation, maybe tapping into some innate values.
And he even developed specific techniques from this, like paradoxical intention.
Yeah, it's a fascinating technique. It uses our human capacity for self-detachment and humor. So if you have a phobia, like maybe you're afraid of sweating in public, he might tell the patient to deliberately try to sweat as much as possible. Show people how much you can sweat.
Really?
Yeah. Or a writer with writer's cramp try to produce the worst scribble imaginable. By intentionally trying to do the feared thing, you kind of break the anxious cycle. It short circuits that intense effort not to do it.
Which all comes back to that core idea of freedom, the freedom to take a stand.
It really does. And Frankl spoke with such authority, didn't he? Being both this respected professor of neurology and psychiatry and a survivor of 4 camps, he lived it.
He was living proof you weren't just a product of conditions.
Exactly. And he used that stark example of Dr. J, this man who was apparently truly monstrous in the Nazi euthanasia program. But then, later, imprisoned himself in Siberia, he reportedly became this incredibly saintly figure, comforting everyone. Frankl used him as an example that people always retain the potential for change, no matter their past or their circumstances.
Which leads to his idea of tragic optimism.
Not a blind optimism, but finding optimism in the face of life's tragic realities. Pain, guilt, death.
Oh.
By using our uniquely human capacities, turning suffering into an achievement through our attitude, turning guilt into an opportunity to change for the better, and seeing life's temporary nature not as depressing, but as a reason to act responsibly now.
Make the most of the moments we have.
Precisely. And this is why happiness can't be pursued directly, he argued. It has to ensue. It's a byproduct of finding meaning.
If you try too hard to be happy.
It backfires. He called it hyperintention, like trying too hard to fall asleep. You focus on the state instead of the reason for the state. Happiness comes when you have a reason to be happy, usually linked to meaning or purpose.
So it's not about reaching some perfect calm state.
No, in fact, he talks about novodynamics, this idea that a certain amount of tension, the tension between what you are and what you ought to become, or between yourself, and a meaning out there waiting to be fulfilled, is actually healthy and necessary for psychological well-being. That striving is what drives us.
Wow. Okay, so bringing it all together, what does this mean for you listening to The Growth Snack today?
I think the key takeaways from this book are just so profound and really practical.
They really are.
Meaning, it seems isn't found by chasing happiness itself. It's found more by dedicating yourself to a cause bigger than you or, to someone you love.
And crucially, meaning is possible in any circumstance, even the absolute worst. Not because suffering is good.
Definitely not.
But because our power to choose our response, our attitude towards it, is immense.
And maybe the most vital point. We always have that freedom, that last inner freedom to choose our attitude no matter what's happening outside us. Life isn't asking what you expect from it. Frankl flips it. Life is asking things of you and your answer. And it's in your actions, your choices, how you respond day by day.
That's the responsibility piece.
Exactly.
And maybe a final thought from the book to leave you with. Something I found really moving. Frankl talks about the past, about the granaries of the past. He says, having been is the surest kind of being. Everything you've experienced, everything you've done, thought, and maybe especially everything you've suffered bravely. It's not lost.
It's stored, secure.
Yeah, it's part of this irreversible reality. It's your history, and it actually gives meaning to your life. Those past sufferings, faced with courage, searching for meaning, they become genuine inner achievements.
It's a source of inner pride that nobody can ever take away from you.
A really powerful perspective to end on. Well, thank you for joining us on The Growth Snack for this deep dive into man's search for meaning.
We really hope Frankl's incredible insights give you something to reflect on. Maybe thinking about what meaning life might be asking of you today.